got the roots, he let the beats build, bitch. And we never switch. Even if I'm rich, I'll be broke like I'm Mitch. Niggas talking down, but that's headed in the wrong direction. But I knock that shit out like the boxing section. Cause they can't touch what they can't see. All I gotta do is be the same me. All I gotta do is keep it G. Always be the same me. While I'm solid, boy, they can't change me. No.
What's going on? What's going on, man? We live from the boxing section. Listen, we have a very, 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 very special guest here with us today. The legendary Cutman, movie star, one of the greatest individuals I've met in this boxing game. Hell of a guy. Great Cutman, but even a better person, man. No other than the great. You know what I mean? We gotta say the great. The great Stitch Duran.
My man, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you again, man. How's everything?
Good. It's nice to be home finally. You know, I've been on the road for a while. I was 10 days in New York for back-to-back fights, Saturday and Sunday at the Garden, or Saturday and Saturday at the Garden, and then did San Antonio this weekend, and it's nice to be home for a week.
Now, I got to ask you, what's it like being away from home so much?
Yeah, it's kind of get used to it. It's you know, I'm up to here with restaurant food. I'm sick of it. Flying, you know, airports, that's the hard part. But going out and meeting people, you know, like yourselves, and, you know, kind of shooting the shit and kind of knowing, you know, new people, and you get new friends and new areas. It's not a bad life, you know, outside of, you know, eating restaurant food and airports.
So how is it? How are you able to balance being so busy but still have a time for your family?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, good wife, you know, good family that have supported me. And, you know, we're talking when we're in San Antonio, how many times, you know, people in our industry, we miss birthdays, we miss graduations, we miss weddings, we miss, you know, there's a lot of things we miss that happen on weekends because we're usually working on weekends. But, you know, my wife and my children understand that this is what I do and this is what I enjoy, and it works out good.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Like with my wife is because they don't really see it until like they see it, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, the thing about it, Kyle, you know, people think, yeah, it's great. Yeah, of course, I travel all over the world, right? But for the most part, it's from airport to the hotel, you know, if we're training, to the gym, back to the hotel, up to the fights, after the fights, back to the hotel, and then back to the airport, right? So there's not a whole lot of things that go on in between. You know, it's usually I'll stay within a 6-block radius of wherever I'm at, and, you know, try to make the best out of it in the short time that we have there. So yeah, it's like the circus, bro. Pick up our stuff and hit the road. I mean, I had to be at the airport at 3 a.m, you know, after the fight. So
yeah. All right. So tell us, man, where you from and how did you get started in boxing?
yeah, I have a real a story I'm very proud of, right? I grew up in the Central Valley of California, which is the agricultural capital of the world. My parents came over as farm workers, and, you know, I was born and raised in a migrant camp. You know, my birth certificate for the address is CPC number 12 for the California Packing Company. So I grew up as a farm worker all my life. I told people, if you picked it, if you ate it, I probably picked it. You know, everything from apricots to grapes to corn to almonds to black figs, green figs, peaches, nectarines. I mean, I could probably name some more that I picked, right? But that kept us healthy, you know, and the being that we're out in the fields, we became athletic because, you know, you're running through all the rows of different things and just kind of lifting up ladders and boxes. So we stayed in shape. And but yeah, that's where I grew up at, you know, and I always wanted to play baseball. I walked on to Merced College from high school. I played 4 years varsity baseball and third base. And I walked on to the college, and the college was 9 miles from my town, and I didn't have a car. So I would go to school with friends, and after school they would leave, and I'd stay and I'd practice with the team, and then I'd have to hitchhike back home, right? So I did that for a while, and I was real naive. And Kyle, this is why I always try to teach people now, because I was real naive. I'm looking at some of these videos on these coaches showing these young kids how to bat and all that. We did everything natural, right? Throwing balls. We used to throw tomatoes at each other, nectarines, peaches. And that was that was our practice within practice, right? But yeah, so I didn't know. I joined the military in 1972, and in 1974 they stationed me in Thailand, and this was during the end of the Vietnam War. But I told myself if I ever went to the Orient, I'd want to study the martial arts. And at that time, Taekwondo was, well, Bruce Lee was big. And so I get to Thailand and I see my first Muay Thai fight. And from there, I started training at the base with the GIs, and got back to the States and continued training and opened up a school of, started working with amateur boxers. And then I opened up a school of kickboxing, ASK, the American School of Kickboxing. And that's what got me to this level. I was a trainer and I managed the fighters. I did everything. I did all circuits, but I loved being a cut man, and that kind of floated to the top. And 27 years ago, I made the move to Vegas to do what I do and to talk to people like you. So I've had a great career, man. I'm real proud of what I've accomplished there. I wrote a couple books, From the Fields to the Garden, 1 and 2, and because the fields are where I grew up at, and the garden, of course, is Madison Square Garden. Well, I was there those 10 days. I was there just the other day, but I've done it for boxing and MMA. So now they're filming a documentary on my life based on the book. And just to say, you were talking about movie star. They interviewed Michael B. Jordan last week, so he came forward, and when I asked him, can we interview you? He said, man, of course, he's like my son, so he came through, and it was very, I haven't heard it. I don't want to hear it till they do the cut, but I know it's, just the relationship I have with Michael. I know he said some good things.
Man, that is amazing, man. That is amazing. Yeah. That's absolutely amazing.
It blows my mind, because I'm still that little Mexican kid that grew up as a farm worker. Those roots I never want to get rid of, because that's, without roots you can't have strength, right, in the tree. And that's what I tell my kids. You got to enjoy your roots, man. And same with you. Without roots, man, you can't grow shit. So sure. That's why I enjoy doing that.
You talk about missing a lot of birthdays and a lot of holidays, right?
Yeah.
Is there any holidays or birthdays that you just won't miss? Like, is it like a particular time, or it's just like I gotta go?
Yeah, when I was in New York, it's those 10 days I was there, it was my 30th anniversary. It's a good question. But I brought my wife with me, so we spend it in New York. But yeah, it's a good question. But yeah, definitely, anything. Yeah, it depends on the situation. But I try to be as much of a family man when I'm home, that they understand. So, but yeah, I think if I had a choice of not going or going to a fight based on, let's say, our anniversary, I would say, nah, I'll pass on that. But that hasn't happened. Birthdays, graduations, yeah, every other things, yeah. But the anniversary hasn't happened.
So because I'm married and I'm going through the early stages of traveling and moving around, what is some advice that you would give me to, like, a conversation that I could have with my wife to say, like, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. What's the conversations like when you first started traveling so much?
Well, yeah, at that time, thank God, a lot of the events that I did were all televised, right? So my wife and my kids, of course, they would watch me on TV and get all excited. And now they don't even pay attention, But it's it's nice to go, and you spend 3-4 days and you're there with the guys. You're doing what you do, and then come fight time, of course, that adrenaline rush that goes with it. But pretty much that's what we do. We hang around the hotel and talk to guys like you and do interviews, and go out to dinner or go out to lunch and kind of walk the streets. And but yeah, it's a great experience, especially when you're going to places like Europe. I mean, I just booked Saudi Arabia with Badu Jack yesterday. He's fighting on the Usyk and Anthony Joshua card. And I'm booked all the way till September 23rd, right? And so yeah, you just kind of at this point you just kind of go and understand that it's your job, and you always go and give it 150%. I also got a call yesterday that they want me to see if I'm available at the end of August or September, because Michael's going to do a photo shoot, Michael B. Jordan. And we had already done one, so they brought me to LA, and I wrapped his and Jonathan Major's hands and spent 14 hours there watching them take thousands and thousands of photos, right? So that's another project that I'll be doing at either the end of August or September. But I told the producer, I said, look, I told Michael I'm with you 100% all the way. So yeah, that's just, it's the fun things that we do, man. It's a job that I have, but it's not even a job, it's an adventure. And I think what you do, you're out there, you're looking at events and you're talking to people, and you're getting a little bit of the insight here and insight there. That's what makes your job enjoyable. I know, because I used to be a reporter.
Yeah.
I used to have a radio show, so I know what goes on, and there's nothing like talking to people that are in the mix.
So, starting out, how did you get the name Stitch?
It's funny. Well, I had my school of kickboxing, right? Excuse me. And at that point, I was Jacob, and believe it or not, man, God, you probably didn't even know my real name at first, but a lot of people don't know my name, right? Yeah. So I had school of kickboxing, right? And one of the guys that I worked with was Dennis Alexio. And if you remember the movie Kickboxer, he was Jean-Claude Van Damme's brother in the movie, the guy in the wheelchair. Well, at that point was a legitimate world champion kickboxer, probably the best athlete I'd ever met until these MMA guys came. But yeah, I did that, and then I had my own school of kickboxing. And this one fighter that I worked with, he was a sparring partner for Dennis. He was on the same card when Dennis fought in Vallejo, and he got a small cut. And I was making the transition from being a coach and learning all aspects of a coach to wrapping hands, working cuts. And at that day, there was nobody to teach you, so you would have to watch and do it by example. So I saw he had a small cut, so I just put direct pressure. I had no medication, but I got a piece of tape about like this, and I cut them into little strips, and I did a butterfly. So David Rooney says, oh man, I don't have to go to the hospital. You save me some stitches, I'm gonna call you Stitch. And that's how that name came. And David Rooney, last time I heard, he was a fisherman somewhere in Alaska, and I don't even know if he knows how much that moment there changed my life, and the whole world just knows me as Stitch.
Yeah, because it's crazy because people call you Stitch so much that we forget your name is Jacob. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
When you Google your name, your first name don't even really come up. It's really Stitch Duran. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know it is. That's crazy. It's like Elvis, like Madonna, right?
Yeah.
One name guys, Cher, Stitch. Yeah, I'll take it.
Now, what was the fight or the fighter you think got you to the point to where you are now, like where everybody was like they trusted you to be their cut man?
Well, this was in boxing. Good question. Nobody's ever really asked that one, and I'll answer it to you this way. I had made the move to, step going back one. The first world title fight I worked in boxing was Tony the Tiger Lopez from Sacramento, California. I worked with him when he fought Julio Cesar Chavez in Monterrey, Mexico. That was my first world title fight. 50,000 people out in the baseball field. And of course, baseball was a game that I admired so much. So from there on, one of the trainers, James Gogi, introduced me to Raul Marquez from Houston. Raul Marquez was the IBF, I think, middleweight champion or super middleweight champion. And I started working with him. Well, he fought Keith Mullins. It's when Hector Camacho fought Oscar De La Hoya here. And Raul Marquez ended up with 5 cuts here, and then one on the nose, something like 70 stitches. And I kept him in the game, and he ended up winning the fight. And that's when people started coming up to me and saying, wow, who is this guy? But getting in getting to Vegas before that, when I had my school of kickboxing, I had already been working on cuts because fighters in kickboxing get cut also. So when I moved to Vegas, it was like me being in the minor leagues in kickboxing and then going up to the major leagues and proving myself. And wrapping hands is one of my specialties, and that's how I opened up a lot of doors. When I wrapped Tony the Tiger's hands, when I first met him, he's working on the speed bag, boom, and then the bag pops, and the first thing he says, "I'll see you in Mexico." So I've wrapped a whole bunch of hands. I don't even count them, and people come up to me and ask me to wrap their hands, and so all that was inclusive in what I do. But that's how the name came about.
Most definitely, most definitely. Was there anybody that kind of taught you the game on how to be a successful cutman, or you just kind of took it and kind of just perfected yourself?
Yeah, on techniques, I unfortunately I had to learn by myself. There was Chuck Bodak was a big supporter of mine, and really the first one who welcomed me into boxing. He was the old man that worked with Julio Cesar Chavez, Oscar De La Hoya, Paez, but he used to put the Band-Aid, the tape on his forehead with a picture of the fighter. He looked like Colonel Sanders, and he's the first one to welcome me. But in boxing, the old cut men in the old days thought it was a secret. I remember Bone Crusher Smith fought Marvis Frazier in Richmond, California, and this guy did a good job on cuts, and I was trying to make that transition. So I said, "Hey, man, you did a good job on the cuts. I'm trying to learn to be a cut man. Can you tell me what you did?" He says, "F you, I'm taking this to my grave, and you got to learn like me." And he walked away. And I felt about this big, and I said, "Man, I'm never going to be like him." So that's why I always teach now. And now I go back to Oakland with Andre Ward, that was the world champ. And we're both, Andre and I were from Oakland, right? He forgot about it. And I've done this interview hundreds of times. I've never thrown his name out. But now I get back and him and his son want to take a picture with me, right? So I consider that a victory within itself, within my own mind, that I never wanted to be like this guy, is to always treat people with respect. And, that's something I've always had. And when people come and ask me questions about wrapping hands or working cuts, I'll let them know, because it's not fair to the fighters if the guy you're working with does not know the basic foundation of how to take care of a fighter. And keep in mind, Kyle, our combat sports, all of them, kickboxing, bare knuckle fights, MMA, boxing, of course, none of us have to be certified to be considered professionals. We all do it, unfortunately, on the on the mistakes of a fighter. And so that's, one of my legacy is to say that I made this game a lot safer, and that's by teaching.
Definitely, man. Like the first time I met you, we were in Atlantic City, and you always got your bag. You know what I mean? You always got the black bag. You got the Stitch uniform and everything else. You walking up, and they're like, they're not trying to let you in. I'm like, "Hey, y'all don't know who this is?
Yeah.
Man, it's the best cut man in boxing, man. What y'all doing?" And then they looked at it, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, "Man, y'all tripping." But what's crazy, the thing is, though, you were so humble that you were just like chilling. Although you could have been like, "Man, y'all know who I am, man. I'm Sister," you know what I mean? But you were so humble. And I was like, man, like that's kind of how, that's kind of how I wanted to be. Like, I'm like, man, dude was so humble, even though he could have just was like, "Man, if y'all get out the way." And then man, so that was one of the highlights of my weekend. Was like, man. So I always tell people, but yeah, man, I helped Stitch Duran get in the back top rank, man. They was acting like they didn't know who he was, so I had to let them know. So
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I understand. We're all common people, man, and they got a job to do. I got a job to do, and I ain't that guy. Even like, they'll have a car service pick me up at the airport, right? Take me to the hotel, and guy wants to carry my bag. I said, "No, man, I do my own stuff." Thanks. So I appreciate it, but that's not the guy I am. I appreciate the ride for sure. And I always give them a tip. So because they understand they're workers just like me.
For sure. Okay. So, what would you say today? What is the biggest fight that you were the cut man in to date? What was the biggest fight?
Oh man, you can ask, you can name a sport and I'll give you a fight, but Actually, the last one with Vladimir Klitschko when he fought Anthony Joshua. That was a mega fight in my mind because of the scenarios that happened, and I'll kind of let you know how it led up to being, one of my favorite fights. Is my daughter Carla had gotten married Wednesday in the island of Crete, so Thursday I flew to London and I checked into the hotel, but Vladimir was staying in an apartment, so I didn't see Vladimir till the weigh-ins Friday afternoon, and we're in the green room waiting for him to get on the scales. And keep in mind, I've been with Vladimir for 8 years, right? Him and Vitaly, and now unfortunately they're both fighting the Russians in the Ukraine. So anyway, I'm talking to Vladimir and Vitaly, and finally, as I leave, I understand fighters, they're going through a whole lot of things leading up to the fight, especially the night before the fight. So I put my hand on Vladimir and I said, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. And I leave. I want to get that in his head. So here I am right before Michael Buffer does the announcements. I'm putting the final Vaseline on Vladimir, and we're this far apart. And between 90,000 people watching live and millions across the world, nobody knows what he said but me. He looks at me and says, as I put the Vaseline, he says, "You could call me son." So, that gave me chills, and because I knew it got into his mind where he felt relaxed, and ended up being, he lost to Anthony Joshua, but it was one of the best fights, he said, that he's ever had. So he called me after the fights and daddy, and it's got, but months later, I run into him in Germany and I said, Vladimir, that moment, why? And he says, Stitch, he goes, there's very few people I trust in my life. You are one of them, so that's pretty powerful, man.
Man, that's huge. That is
huge. Yeah, and then it's I can't let you hear it right now because I don't know how to do it. But when I did the Creed movie, they Michael and Michael directed it, so he came to me as a director, and then the other producers as who should give away the WBC belt. In one of the fights, they give away the green belt, so I give him the history. I said, well, this is the most prestigious belt. It was created by Jose Suleiman in Mexico City. His son Mauricio now is representing it. It should be a Mexican guy that gives the belt away. So there was a guy that I chose from the audience that gave the belt away in the movie and made his whole day, right? But when Earl Spence fought Ugas in Dallas, I see Mauricio, the son, and I explained to him the story. And of course, both Vladimir and Vitaly were WBC champions. So Mauricio says, well, let's take a picture and let's send it to them, right? Even though they're in the heart of the battle, right? So we sent it to them, and Vladimir came out with a comment, oh, my man, so especially Stitch, who saved my career, and, I wouldn't have been champion for 12 years if he would not have saved my career in multiple places. So Stitch is the man, and I got this recording right here that to me is precious.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
As a cut man, what is the hardest part of the job?
No, it's not. It's nothing. Well, in my position, bro, it's not even a job, man. It's an adventure. But well, I shouldn't say the hardest, but the most disciplined thing is to be consistent. To regulate everything and always prepare for the worst case scenarios. Every time let's say I'm working with one fighter, I'll bring enough equipment, gauze and tape and all that for 5 fighters, just in case I make a mistake wrapping a fighter's hands or somebody asks me to wrap their hands. So I always prepare for that. And then come fight time, I always tell these young cut men, always prepare for the worst case scenario because that's why you're here, So it's all in proper preparation and having the right tools and when to use them and how, and nowadays, Kyle, I tell guys, young fighters, I said, look, if your cut man is one that has a swab in his mouth and he puts it in his ear and no gloves, get another cut man. Some guys, like I said, none of us are trained to do what we do. Some have just kind of floated to the top on experience, and that's the only way we get it. But if you got to show that you're a cut man, you're probably not a cut man.
Yeah. How important is it to you to shape the minds of the next generation of cutmen?
100% important, because I want to make sure they do it well. And as you look at your fights now, a lot of the younger cutmen, and you know who they are, have really taken the techniques that I use, and they implement them for themselves. So you look at the guys that have gloves, you look at the guys that have the wrist wrap here where the swabs go here instead of your mouth. You have the guys that will put the Vaseline here and they'll work like an artist. Those are the guys that get techniques from me, that they've seen me work and they know that they're efficient. And I've explained it to them. These are the ones for that short period of time. This is the position and you have to be in also to get the most out of your 50 seconds. So yeah, my job is to teach and to make sure that they do it right. But when I see these young guys do it, and I get, like, God, I was in San Antonio just over the weekend, and even New York, guys come up to me and says, I learned how to wrap pants watching your videos. I follow your example because I see what you do, and to me, that's it's extremely important. So, good question.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because one of my friends, she's a cut woman out in Philly, and she said you helped her out a lot as far as doing all the raps and the cuts, and so it's amazing, man. What you've been able to accomplish. So let's talk about this, right? If you could choose 3 cut men, what's the 3 cut men you choosing? Not excluding yourself.
Well, there's 3 that I actually work with, on a regular basis with Top Rank. Mike Basil is doing a great job. I mean, he's with Top Rank. We work as house cutmen, and I brought them in because of the experience that they've had. And I tell guys, if you get a cutman that's worked in MMA or bare knuckle fights because they've had that experience of working on cuts. Mike Basil is one. Paul Querido from New Jersey is another one. You got Juan Ramirez from San Diego that works good cuts. These guys. You got Bob Ware here that worked with Floyd Mayweather. So there's a group of guys that I use that are all top of the line guys. You got Jamie Huey here from Vegas that I use, and these are the primary guys because they've we work as a team. As Paul Querido says, we're one team, one mission. OTOM, and that's what we do. So yeah, I have my own guys that I try to give them as much work as possible.
That's dope. Gotta ask you this. This was a question that we have in the chat from early, right? This is a question we had on the panel. Which cuts are worse, MMA or boxing? And now you could throw in bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah, it would go. Good question. It would go bare knuckle fights for sure. It's I think they have a 70% cut ratio. So if you're going to get in that ring, you're going to come out with some kind of cut. MMA, that's a good question. MMA, their cuts are deeper, right? They're a little bigger, a little deeper because you use knees and you use elbows and you use the instep of your foot and you use 4-ounce gloves. So those are easy. Man, when I do a boxing show, I just kind of relax, So the cuts aren't as prominent as they are, And if you do get a cut in boxing through a headbutt or something like that, then you got to get your work. But not everybody in boxing gets cut, And bare knuckle fights, expect it. Multiple MMA, probably prepare for it.
Okay, so talk about bare knuckle boxing for a second. Who was the person that came to you and asked you to be their cut man in that realm?
Dave Feldman, the owner. He had contacted me, and when they did the first bare knuckle fight, and and the same thing. I took it for one reason, Kyle, and one reason only is to see how they operated the company and to see the kind of cut ratio. So it was a study for me, but they implemented some great rules. Having cutmen on board was the best thing you could have done. And so, yeah, it's Dave Feldman's the one that brought me on board. And, unfortunately, when this COVID kicked in, of course, they cut everything off. And then when the bare knuckle fight started again, they were all being held in Florida. And at that time, the COVID was still kind of sketchy. And so I didn't want to travel. And I ran into Dave Feldman, excuse me, at one of the DAZN fights. I think what KSI fought, not KSI, Jake Paul fought Tyrone Woodley. And he said, hey, man, love to have you back and all that. But then since then, Top Rank brought us in as the house cutman, and they're based out of Vegas. So it made it a lot easier for me. But I love to, one of these days, continue doing bare knuckle fights. It's good sport, good fighters, and the people that do it, Dave Feldman and them doing a great job. They have one rule, I'll throw that in, that I like, that I think MMA should might use it, because cuts are inevitable in bare knuckle fights. So the referee during the fight, the referee has the opportunity to call time, bring the fighter to me and the doctor. I have 30 seconds to work on the fighter as the doctor evaluates the cuts. And because you have a cut doesn't mean, when they stop a fight, Kyle, it's when the fighter is at a disadvantage. So if the cuts keep getting in the eyes, then that'd be a good time to stop it. But if it's here or if it's here and it's more cosmetic, let the fight go. So I like that rule. I think MMA should implement it.
So let me ask you this: what was the worst cut you ever worked on?
Oh, tons of them. Tons. Yeah. Well, I guess. Marvin Eastman had a big old gash right here he took from Vitor Belfort, but this big vein we have right here, when you laugh, that vein that pops. Forrest Griffith, he fought Shogun, and he popped that vein, and he's bleeding like a pig. Well, that was the second time. Let's go to the first one. Jay Heron, when he fought Jonathan Goulet, same thing. He took a knee and poop, and the cut came this way, so it severed that vein, and he's bleeding like a pig, and just blood everywhere on both fighters. Because they're out there grappling and all that. And he comes up to me, and I start working on him and cleaning him off, and there's so much blood that you could feel. It kind of made me nauseated, and it's the first and only time I've gotten nauseated. So much blood, front to back, top of the bottom. They both were full of blood, and the doctors asked me if I could stop the cut. Yeah, no problem. I'm working on it, and I cover it up with the Vaseline and adrenaline, and the blood just pops right through the Vaseline. I said, "Oh shit, we got to." So that it finally went to they stopped it because it was too bloody. But that mat, it's hanging in Randy Couture's gym here in Las Vegas, and Jay Heron is proud to say that that was the baddest cut I ever worked on. So,
what would you say was so? If you had to choose, right? You had to choose the biggest fight. You could choose boxing or MMA, right? You could choose the two biggest stars to do cut work, right? What would that match be? Who would those fighters be?
to match them up, you're saying?
Yeah.
A boxer versus MMA?
No, boxer and boxer, and then MMA versus MMA. Like you could put on like the biggest show, but you had to be the cut man. What's the fight you'll make?
Man, I've done them all, bro. I've reached that peak a long time ago. So it's not. I've done them all. But Tyson Fury, you're talking about. Tyson Fury, is the big guy right now, and Francis Ngannou is, the big guy in MMA, and But yeah, I've done them all, from the Randy Couture's to Wanderlei Silva's to Vitor Belfort to you name George St. Pierre. Done them all. So it doesn't get much better than the ones I've had.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know? Because I'm not sure. I didn't get too much research on that, but I do want to know. What do they allow cutmen in the Hall of Fame, boxing Hall of Fame?
I don't know if there even is one, but that's not important. I don't really care. People say it's kind of embarrassing. Hey, State, you're a legend and this and that, but yeah, things like that. It's I give my glory through guys like Vladimir and all these that give me a hug and kiss and tell me they love me. You know, that's my reward.
That's dope. That's dope. How important is it? Um, how important is to enjoy the moment?
No, there's nothing like it. You know, it's you go through the thrill of victories and the agony of defeats, right? And fortunately for a lot of the guys I work with, it's the thrill of victory. But yeah, it's nothing like it. You know, and like I tell my wife, it's one thing to come home and try to take a shower, eat, and go to sleep, but your adrenaline's still pumping up for 3 hours later, right? So that's the thrill of victory, and to understand that you're part of that history makes it all worthwhile.
Definitely. So let's talk about Creed, the first one, right? What
Yeah.
was that phone call like when they gave you the nod when they wanted you in the movie? What was that phone call like?
Yeah, that was it was a trip. And the thing about it, I've never had to audition for any movie. I've been like 7 movies, man, and I haven't had to audition. I did audition for the first one, but I think it was a given to me anyway. But yeah, when I got the call, Ryan Coogler is from Oakland, and I was from Oakland, and he wrote and directed Creed and sold it to the Stallone franchise, right? But when I got the call, it was pretty awesome. But I get the script, and my name is Marcel in the script, right? I don't know anybody named Marcel. I'm gonna have to work on changing it. So when I get to Philadelphia and we start doing our scenes, Rocky is introducing the team to Adonis, and at that time, Sylvester Stallone says, "This is Stitch. He's the best cut man in Philadelphia." Man, I said, "Yes." Who's gonna tell Stallone cut? No, his name is Marcel. So that stayed. And the next day, I thanked him, and he says, "No," he goes, "it has to be authentic." So that's how it started off. Just
Damn.
with Michael B. Jordan, and my job was to wrap his hands every day. So I would be in the trailer with just Michael and I, and his assistant, and would be going through moments, and to the point in the first movie, up around the 5th week, because I did 6 weeks of filming with him. Up around the 5th week, I'm wrapping his hands. I said, Michael, let me tell you this. I said, I'm extremely proud of what you're doing. You're representing our sport to the highest level. I'm going to knight you as a fighter, right? So I'm knighting him as a fighter, right? So that was the relationship we had, and then of course they brought me into the second one, and had a little bit more, and then I'm telling Michael, as I'm wrapping his hands during Creed 2, that I'm so proud of him and Ryan Coogler and Tessa Thompson and Steve Capel, all the young brothers and sisters that have done well. Michael looks at me and says, "Stitch, we went from being actors to writers, producers, and directors." And he looks at me like this and says, "I'm directing Creed 3, and you're with me as long as you want." So that's the relationship I got with this guy.
That's amazing, man. I can't wait to see you in that movie, man. I can't wait to see that. That's one of my favorite movies, man. I love Creed, man. I love Rocky. I love that franchise, and to be a part of that franchise, man, it's pretty big, man.
Oh, it's mega big. It's like I told Michael, I said, what Mick was to Rocky, Stitch is to Adonis, right? And now I'll give you a little feedback on Creed 1. So if you remember that scene when Rocky is doing pads for Michael and he ends up throwing up, and then Michael picks him up. Well, during that scene, we're in Philadelphia and it's snowing, and we're filming in the gyms in the second floor. So we're on the steps going down, so we wouldn't be outside waiting. And all of a sudden I hear Stitch, and I kind of work going up, and I think, maybe it's part of the movie. Well, they did. It was part of the movie, but the next day when I'm wrapping Michael's hands, that wasn't in the script, and it was an improv that Michael did, right? But I told him, I said, "Look, Michael, I ain't one to kiss nobody's butt and all that, but I got to tell you about that moment. That moment was extremely powerful because, that my job, we had just left. Me and the other 2 trainers had just left, and we're saying good. You can barely see us, but we're saying, hey, take care of him. He's a pup, you know. But I said, look, you know that we had just left, and my job is to take care of you. And when Rocky got sick, the first thing you did was call for me. I said, that's the very, very realistic. I could understand that. Stayed in the movie, you know.
Man,
So
I gotta rewatch this shit now. I gotta rewatch this movie again,
yeah,
man. Golly.
yeah, that wasn't in the script, and it's a very powerful scene. Stitch, you know, and even when he gets knocked out, he's going down, and one of his memories is Stitch, you know. So yeah, so on this one, they're doing good. But Michael did a tremendous job as an actor and as a director, and really, I mean, impressive. And I said, you know, the only guy I know that has acted and directed in the same movie was Sylvester Stallone in Balboa, and I worked that movie with. I was Antonio Tarver's cutman in the movie, but I was there for that, so I got to see his expertise. And same thing with Michael. And I asked Michael. I said, Michael, when you're out there doing your scenes, are you looking at it as an actor, or as a director, or as a fighter, or as a director? He says, I do as a director. But he did a tremendous job, man. And when I went to go wrap his hands for his photo shoot, he said there's some scenes that almost made him cry. He goes, and then there's one that really made him laugh, and you're gonna have to watch the movie on that one.
Yeah,
But I think
wait, man.
I think it
I
involves
can't
me.
wait. I'm about to rewatch Creed just because now we got some different insight of the movie. You know what I mean? Those moments, man, are important. I'm
Oh,
glad you shared them with us, man.
yeah, no, the pressure. And how do you think I feel? You know, to be in blockbuster movies like that and having your name called out, and even Max Kellerman, when they're Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman HBO, they're mentioning how Stitch is doing a great job, but so and so, and you know, so I was in the mix. But that's the way it is in a regular fight anyway.
Yeah,
So they duplicated that real well.
yeah, man. That's amazing, man. And I can't wait to see Creed 3.
Yeah.
Um, how is it? How is it? How are you able to balance being the house cut man for Top Rank and also being able to do the movie stuff? How do you balance that in the family? Like what how let me say this. The margin of error, how thin is it?
It's not thin, you know, it's just planning and coordinating and all that. But Top Rank is real good. And like say, I like the Creed movie. You know, I think I missed 3 or 4 of their shows, maybe. Yeah. But these other cutmen that I mentioned earlier will take my place. Like I think August 20th, Top Rank has a show in Temecula, and I just booked Badu Jack in Saudi Arabia the same day. So I'll send one of these other guys to do the work with Top Rank. So you know, it's pretty easy. Just imagine coordinating.
Okay. Okay. Now, how long are you gonna be overseas?
It's just you know we go and it probably be like a week, 5 days to a week maximum. You know, I just go and only because when I went to Dubai, I went a little longer, only because it was Dubai. Or the same thing with Saudi Arabia. So well, we'll see. You know, but it's normally not more than 5 days. After that, it's nice to get home.
Right. So, if you can choose, right, one place to work and do a vacation.
Rio de Janeiro,
Okay.
Brazil. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. You know, the people are real nice. Of course, you know, the beaches are great. The food is good. The atmosphere, yeah, it's I got to take my wife to Rio. I like it.
Yeah. Amazing, man. That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got to meet your wife when we were in the Joe Smith fight. Um, Tell me about that fight.
Yeah, you know, I knew when they told me that he was going to fight Beterbiev, I knew it was going to be an extremely tough fight because, you know, when the first time I saw Beterbiev, I said, yeah, it's tough as nails, right? Yeah, it was, you know, Joe Smith, I love working with that young guy. He's a blue collar guy just like me. He still works in construction, you know, but it's tough as nails. You know, the fights that he's been in have all been tough fights. But, you know, this one here, Beterbiev with just a little step in experience over Joe, and that's what did him in. So, but it was heartbreaking to see him go down like that.
It was man, because I'm watching. I'm like, when I seen Better Beef come out,
Yeah.
I told a friend, the guy was with Leon. I told him, I said, this ain't gonna last long. This ain't gonna last long, man. I mean, if you could choose, um, if you could choose your dream job outside of being a cut man, what would that job be?
Playing baseball for the Oakland A's.
Because I'm from Oakland too, so that's near and dear.
Yeah. I love Oakland, man. It's my wife wants to go back, but she's with me here all the time.
So how was it working with Andre Ward in those big moments?
Yeah, good. Andre, I at King's Gym, you talking about Oakland, I was the first member to join King's Gym. He was on 23rd and East 14th. And from there, because I was good in Muay Thai, but I wanted to learn boxing skills, right, to put them together. But I remember Andre, when he was a kid, he always told me, when I turn pro, I want you to be my cut man. And when he turned pro, I was his cut man. I think I did every fight except 2 of them because I was already booked with the UFC and I already had a visa. I think we were going to Brazil one time and somewhere else. So I didn't want to disrespect the UFC and have them lose money. So I took those fights. But every other fight I worked with Andre. And, you're talking about Hall of Fame. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. Good guy. Good guy. And he could fight. And every time, he's like Shakur Stevenson. Every time I looked at Andre Ward, he don't look like that fighter, but he could fight.
Yeah. How is it working with Shakur Stevenson?
Oh, awesome. Also, let me get this here. Yeah, Shakir's same thing. Shakir, like my wife said, oh, he looks like a baby. Yeah, well, but he could fight, and the whole team, Kay and all the coaches, and they're all good people. And that's, for me, Kai, I tell people I've done hundreds and hundreds of world title fights, hundreds. And it's not about the championship fights no more. It's about the characters that I work with during the fight, the moments. Those are the moments that mean so much to me.
So being a house cut man, how do you guys choose who gets the A side, who gets the B side? Like, how does that work out?
Well, the fighters do, actually. I like the program that Top Rank put together for boxing. This is the same program that we, literally me, Burt Watson, we and Leon Tabbs in the UFC, when I first came on board with the UFC, we're the ones that put this program together because Dana White brought me in to be the second cut man. And at that point, there was no technique. Leon Tabbs was the original cut man from UFC #1, and he was Bernard Hopkins' cut man out of Philadelphia. So it was him and I. And Burt Watson was the coordinator, the fighter relationships that got the fighters ready and all that, and set up the dressing rooms and the scales. And so we put the program together that now all MMA and bare knuckle fights use, and Top Rank used it during the COVID. They brought in Mike Baswell and myself as house cutmen, and they liked the program so much after the COVID thing that they decided to keep us. But what they'll do is they'll ask, if you have a cut man, that's fine. If you don't have a cut man, we supply 2 cut men, and a lot of them always prefer me. But at the weigh-ins, we'll go and check with them after they get off the scale. Do you need a cut man? Do you need gauze and tape? Somebody wrap your hands. So we offer these services to them, and of course they jump on it in a heartbeat. So for me to work 5-6 fights in a night is pretty common. But I used to do that time after time in the UFC. It's a good question.
We're gonna open up the panel for questions. I know you guys had some questions in the comments, but it's hard to focus on the questions in the comments and focus on the interview. But if you want to join the panel to talk to Stitch, the link is in the chat, and I'll put the link back in the chat one more time. We got about 10 more minutes with him. I don't want to keep him too long, because I gotta respect his time. But we got my man Mex. What's going on, Mex?
Yo, what's good, Kyle? How's it going, Stitch? Legend, bro. Blessed to be in your presence, man.
Hey, Mex, man. Orale. How you doing, my man? Thank you.
I'm good, man. Yo, I mean, just to get straight into it, I know you've been in the game a lot of years. What are your top 3 worst cuts that you've had to work on personally?
Ooh, Marvin Eastman was a big one. We're talking about Jay Haran. God, I've worked cuts down to the bone, bro. You know, bare knuckle fights. I think Jason Knight. I thought he had 10 cuts. He ended up with 12. You know, so he looked like Chucky. You know, so
Was that with the Artem Ball fight?
yeah, that was with
Yeah.
our, and he ended up with a bunch of cuts. You know, I got a picture of them side by side, and yeah, it looked like they went through blenders. You know, so yeah, tons of cuts, bro. You know, there's so many I can't even tell you, but I made a lot of money for a lot of fighters, keeping them in the game.
And when stuff like that happens, so when you go on your job, are you hoping that you don't have to work too much, or do you get excited when stuff like that happens and you got a lot of stuff to do?
That's a good question. Nah, you know, I prepare for worst case scenario. You know, yeah, if it don't happen, that's fine. You know, it's not like I need to work cut. You know, but if it does happen, then I make sure that I give them 150%. Let's say I'm working with you, Max. So I'm in the dressing room with you, and I'll sit down and I'll talk to you. You know, you got any questions? You got any concerns? You know, and I'll let you know. I said, look, man, I know the type of fight you're going to be in. I'm going to keep ice on you every round. I'm not going to wait till you start swelling. I'm going to do a lot of preventive maintenance. So I'll keep that ice on you and just, you know, make sure that you're okay. And then when I worked with Tyson Fury, when he fought Deontay Wilder the last time, I did the same thing. And as I'm saying goodbye in the dressing room, he comes and he says, thanks for keeping ice on me. He says, give me a kiss as I love you. You know, so things like that mean a big thing for the fighters, and it means a big thing for me. Because you guys are gladiators, right? And even though they're gladiators, deep inside they're all babies, and my job is to take care of the baby.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. Yeah, so when you have fighters like you say, like Tyson Fury or someone like Diaz or Jason Knight, you know, going into it, they got the scar tissue already there, probably ready to go. That's the precautions you take is before the fight, you just get it going. Huh? You don't wait until it pops open.
Yeah, that's a real good question, but it seems that, you know, somebody asked me that about scar tissue, and I said, you know, I don't think I've ever really noticed that a scar tissue, a cut will open easier. You see what I'm saying? You know, there's certain guys, certain bone structures. You're talking about the Diaz, bro. I was talking about the Diaz, where they're going to get cut up here anyway, just the way the bone structure is and the contact, right? But yeah, in that situation, good point, man.
What's going on, Bruce?
What's up, TBS? How you doing, brother?
Good.
Max, how are you? Stitch Duran, brother. Been following you for a long time, my man. I just want to ask you a couple of questions, brother. Now we all remember the Mike Tyson Buster Douglas fight where the cut man was so ill prepared in that fight.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't have the tools you needed, and have you ever improvised?
No, good question. No, you know, I was telling Kyle earlier on, every fight, I always go through every inventory of what I have: the gauze, the tape, the ice bags, the KO swells, the amount of swabs that I have. I go through all that every event that I go through, so that I don't have that mistake. And that's a shame, you know. And as you look back, that's a good point there, Bruce. Devin Haney, when he fought George Kambosos, when he won the world title the other day, Bob Ware, cut man that I work with, couldn't make it through visa problems. So they brought in this guy that had sunglasses on, and he couldn't even see. And when the cameras were on him, he would put them on, and cameras were off, he'd put them up. And, you know, he wanted that notoriety that he's Devin Haney's cut man, but he did a horrible job. I saw Devin, we flew to New York together, him and his dad, and, you know, his hand was bothered, and he said, I didn't even use a KO swell. So they were ill prepared like Mike Tyson's guys. And Mike Tyson's guy was so embarrassing that, you know, and that's why I was saying earlier to Kyle, you know, everybody wants to be a cut man. And, you know, they do it at the expense of the fighters.
Now, I heard you say in one interview, the OGs, when you were breaking in, they didn't want to tell you shit.
Right.
Now you find younger guys asking you questions. Do you remember that? So are you more open to the younger trainers, the younger cut men now?
100%, man. 100%. I get emails, I get texts. This guy in Germany, I got a message today. He's fighting Saturday. He wants me to send him a video, right? Just as an encouragement and all that. But yeah, 100%, Bruce, is I don't want to be like that guy that kind of blew me off, right? I thought that was kind of chicken shit on his part.
Yeah.
And you know, but that was the mentality of boxing in those days, and things have changed. And like I was telling Kyle, you'll see the new generation of cutmen that have gloves. They have the wrist strap here where they put their swabs instead of here and here. You know, they put the Vaseline here and they work like those are all techniques that I've used for years and years. That for the 50 seconds, it's the most practical ones to use. But I always check my inventory.
I got you. One more question before I get out.
Sure.
The infamous Moncel solution, bro. What's your opinion on that with Sonny Liston?
Yeah, you know, Moncel solution it's a sulfuric base, and it burns the tissue. And I know because I worked with Livingstone Bramble when he fought this guy. I think we're in Minnesota in some reservation, and the guy ended up with a big old nasty cut. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, you know, that's good. Next thing you know, it's not bleeding no more. The guy put Moncel solution on it, right? So months later, I saw him in Las Vegas, and Tony, I can't remember his last name. And I asked him about that cut, and he said he had surgery done on it because it burned all the tissue. And that's what that Moncel solution.
Mm-hmm, man.
And that's why they.
I'll tell you, I could ask you a million questions, brother, but I'm respecting my brother TBS over here, man. I appreciate you having on me, man. Great to talk to the legendary Stitch Duran and all of you guys, man. Thanks for having me here, man. Peace.
No question, no problem, no problems at all. Stitch. So Jay Coop he had a question in the chat. He said, "Do you want to open up a cutman school?"
No, you know I've done seminars, and you know I don't certify guys because it's a 4-hour seminar, right? But it shows you the basic foundation of what you need to do in wrapping hands, the basic foundation of working cuts. But I can't certify you because Max, you say I spent 4 hours. He goes and says, "Oh yeah, I'm certified. Stitch sent me this," and then he works on a cut and don't know what to do. So that's just the basic foundation that I give you. From there, you have to expand your knowledge and go from there. So yeah, it's easier to teach, but not not too much.
Yeah, this is kind of a random question, not really boxing related, but where do you get your style from? Because I think you kind of became legendary for your appearance, your style. People thinking you look a lot different from other cutmen, a little more outspoken than other cutmen. Like, where does that come from?
That's a good question, bro. I'll go back to my roots. You know, I grew up as a farm worker, right? And so my parents were always they stayed humble. They always helped. People came in, you know, from Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado, Mexico to come work the crops. And my parents would always help them find a place to stay. And my dad was always like a foreman. So he would hire them to go work with us. And so the giving and the teaching comes from them. But yeah, you know, I want to make sure that this game is done the right way. And unfortunately, you know, the old days, nobody would want to teach. And that's my legacy, is to always give back.
To piggyback on Dude's question about being prepared, you say you do multiple fights in one night, sometimes an event. Have you ever ran out of material you needed because one of the earlier fights is too crazy?
No.
Yo, man, you ain't hear him to say that?
Yeah.
No, I heard him say before. He goes, you know, he checks everything, but I'm just thinking, you know, you got bloodbaths in the first fight, and you're like, oh shit, I don't got no more guys now.
No, but that's a good point, and I'll go back to one of those issues is the towels, right? So in the dressing room, I'll cut towels about the size of face towels, and I'll keep them wet, and that's what I use on that. But there's been fights where, yeah, the guy's bloody, and I go through my towels where I have to have one of the guys go and get a towel and cut me up some more pieces. But for my actual equipment, no, that I always prepare for worst case scenario. But good question, very good question. Nobody's ever asked that.
Yeah. Oh, you Kai?
Well, man, I appreciate you, Stitch, for coming on and taking your time out to be with us on the day. Man, somebody take you out. We're going to just have me and him, and then we'll talk later. Man, I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your time with us, man. I had you on for a whole hour. Man, we could have done this all day, but I know you got other things you got to do. But man, this is one of the best interviews that I've done and been a part of, and I really appreciate you for extending your time to us. If you can let everybody know where to find you at, where to get your books from, and things like that.
Yeah, the book is at Amazon.com. It's From the Fields to the Garden. So I wrote the first one, and then I wrote the second one after the UFC let me go. So you get to know the story behind that. And then the documentary, hopefully by the end of November, we should be done. Creed comes out November 23rd at theaters near you. And I'll tell you a real quick one. So I'm wrapping Michael's hands, and in the trailer, and he gets a phone call, and it's Denzel Washington, of all people. So Denzel asked him, when's the movie coming out? And he says, traditionally the Rocky and Creed movies have come out Thanksgiving weekend, so November 23rd. So, but thanks for having me on, bro. I really appreciate it. We'll do it again.
Oh man, most definitely. And we'll see each other either July 15th or August 13th.
Okay, done.
We'll definitely see each other then, because I'll be in Vegas for the Teofimo Lopez fight. Because I'm always with Troy Isaac. Troy Isaac is my man.
Sure.
So I always.
All right, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Man, thank you for being on, man. I appreciate you, Stitch. See you soon.
All right. Adios.
All right, y'all, man. I appreciate everybody for coming through, showing love, man. We had a great interview. If you missed it, go back and watch the playback. Man, it's always a treat when players meet. Thank y'all for breaking bread with me. In the words of the great philosopher Lil E, I want y'all to breathe air and live life. Man, we'll be back at it again within a couple hours. I'm telling you, we're grinding, man. In the words of the great philosopher, Blue Blood Sports TV, the grind don't stop. So we'll be back in maybe an hour or two with another interview, man. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate y'all for coming through, man. And with that, man.
The roots, let the beats build, bitch. And we never switch. Even if I'm rich, I'll be broke like I'm Mitch. Niggas talking down, but that's headed in the wrong direction. But I knock that shit out like the boxing section. Cause they can't touch what they can't see. All I gotta do is be the same me. All I gotta do is keep it G. Always be the same me. While I'm solid, boy, they can't change me. No.